You're going to splice and move us stuff around.
Yes.
Anyway, aren't you?
Gentlemen, welcome to Project Northeast, the early football years. I'd like each of you to introduce yourself and tell us when you were at Northeast and when you graduated or where life took you afterwards.
I played on the B team in 1945, and then I got the bug. A friend of mine, and we decided to join the U.S. Marine Corps. So we joined in 46, and due to an Almar, in other words, after 18 months, if we didn't sign up for 4 years, they were going to let us go. And of course, I was ready to get out. So I came back to Northeast, and I talked to Principal Mr. Laughlin, and told him I'd like to come back and enter school and play football. And he said, no, that's not going to be possible. What we usually do is we send those military people over to Manual High School. Well, I pleaded and told him about some of my teammates that I played with, that I'd be playing with in this 48 season. And so he said, I can't promise you anything. So I would be really, one of the most important times of my life, call it immaturity, whatever, when I received in the mail that letter from Coach Markey, not addressed to me personally, but mailed to me and telling me to get my feet toughened up and come out, and I think the letter was August 27th, 48, or something close to that. I just can't tell you. In fact, I still dream about it a lot of times, how important it was to me to get out there and try to make a place for myself on that team.
Me? Okay. Bob Fagan. I graduated in 49. Of course, in 1948, this football year, I was a senior. I had gone to all the schools there. Went to Thatcher grade school, Northeast Junior, Northeast Senior. Never walked more than 3 blocks to school. So I didn't know what it was to ride a bus or anything like that. And I had 2 brothers who graduated ahead of me. 3 sisters later, well, 2 sisters later. But anyway, I played second string ball my sophomore year, my junior year. I'd gone out for center and was behind Joe Salchek here on the second team during those years. And so anyway, come my senior year, my brother, who graduated in 1947, had played end for Northeast, and I wanted to be on the first team. And so I asked Coach Markey, I says, is there a position I could change to that would allow me to make the team? He says, well, your brother Larry played in. He says, why don't you give that a shot? I said, okay. So I tried it, and of course I liked it. And so I became left end, even though I wasn't on the starting lineup at the first of the year. A fellow by the name of Powell was ahead of me. And so at that year, we changed our defense. Prior to that, it had always been a 6-2-2-1 was standard defense throughout the whole interscholastic league. Well, of course, we were all basically, we only had 3 returning linemen, if I remember right. Charlie Guy and Greg Temple and our friend here, Bill. Anyway, we all knew all the various positions and how to play the various offenses and defenses. So Coach changed our defense to a 5-3-2-1, which was never heard of before. And at that time, a 5-3-2-1 created a nose guard. That was a defensive person right opposite the center of the other team. They didn't know what to do with us. I became an outside linebacker because you only had 5 linemen. And 3 linebackers and 2 halfbacks and safety. So I became the left outside linebacker. Well, in second team ball, I played center, which was always a linebacker position on the defense. So it wasn't strange to me to be a linebacker. And so that's kind of what I did. And the first game was against William Chrisman. And Coach put me in after about 5 minutes of play. And I played the rest of the game. And then I became the starting left end at that point. So as we went on through the year, we did let Chrisman score on us when we fumbled in our own end zone. and they recovered and they scored a touchdown. So as we went on through the year, none of the other teams were scoring on us. We played Argentine as our other non-conference game. We were kind of, I think I was, not all the other team members were, a little bit anxious about this because Argentine had a reputation for being a rough end of town. And we didn't know what we was going to get into over there. And sure enough, we went out there and I can still remember this tackle opposite me on their right tackle. He had this tape on his helmet, kind of mean looking, and he'd get down in his stance and he'd double up his fist and just like this. And I thought, oh God, no. I didn't have to block him very often, but occasionally I had to block the tackle on a slant. And I thought, oh man, I'm going to get murdered. Well, Greg Tyndall was the tackle who played opposite him. So our first running play was a halfback through the left side, and Tyndall had to block him. And so Tyndall comes back into the huddle. He's got a nosebleed. Or, I'm sorry, a cut lip. He had a cut lip. We didn't have face masks then. He had a cut lip. And he says, Bobby, to the quarterback, Bobby Simmons, he says, let's run that play again. Bobby looked and said, okay. So they ran it again. Of course, Tyndall went back to block this guy. And so we come back, and Tyndall says, well, let's run it one more time, Bobby. So we ran it again. We got a first down. And so we come back in, and Bobby says, well, Tyndall, he says, no, it's all right, just run anything. So he called the fullback slant, I think it was 45 or whatever it was, where I had to block this tackle. And I thought, oh, man, now that I'm going to get clobbered. So ball snapped, and I went to block this guy. And I'm not kidding you, I had to chase him down the field to catch him. He just floated. Tyndall had softened it up tremendously. And so I didn't have any trouble blocking him the rest of the game. And we won that game without being scored on. Got into the league, and we had not been scored on. And so when we come up against Southwest, who was not a very strong team, we were, of course, favored to win. We were supposed to play on Saturday. And it rained that day, or it had rained just before that, and we played at the Blue Stadium, what was the Blue Stadium, athletic stadium, and baseball diamond. And so the baseball team told us, well, you can't play on Saturday because the field's too wet. We don't want you tearing up the field. So they rescheduled our game for Tuesday night, which was unusual. In the meantime, prior to that, Charlie Guy, our fullback's birthday, was on Monday night. We'd already planned a party. I don't think you guys went to it, but it was a bunch of us guys who planned a party for Charlie Guy. So we thought, well, we'll go ahead and have our party. Don't need to tell Coach about it. We'll just go ahead and do it. We don't have trouble beating this team. So sure enough, we had a little party, and as a bunch of high school kids would do back then, had a little beer and whatever, you know. And didn't stay out all that late, but still, it was a party. So anyway, Tuesday we go out to the stadium, ready to play football, supposedly. They kicked off to us to start the game. In the first half, we never got past the 50-yard line. Fumbled 4 times. Now you guys talk about Marquis. Well, one thing that happened at half during that game, we went into the dugout, to the locker room, and Marquis came in and he was really ticked off. He read us one big riot act. And he told us, he says, you know, he says, I've been coaching you all year this year. He says, and you're nothing but an embarrassment to me. He says, he turned to go out of the locker room and says, I'm going back out on the field. He says, I don't care if you even come out. He says, I don't care if you guys remember that?
No.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he said, I don't care if you even come out of the locker room. And he walked out. I think Charlie Guys one finally said, hey, look, guys, we got to put this all together. Be okay. So
We tore the door down almost, get out of there.
we went back out on the field. We're ready to go. We kicked off to them. They ran it back to about the 50-yard line. Okay, well, we can still stop them. We haven't been scored on. They completed a pass on our 2-yard line. They had first and goal on our 2-yard line. We haven't been scored on. We start thinking, hey, wait a minute. These guys are about to score on us. So they ran a play, and got down to our 6-inch line. Now they ran what's called a box formation, if I remember right, where the yards pulled in the back, one of the runners in the backfield followed that interference into the line, right off tackle. So the stadium out there, in the stands, you could look right straight down to the west where that goal line was that we were defending, and you could look right straight to see what was going on the line. And my dad was in the stands, and he told me later, he says, you know, he says, that one play, he says, I didn't know if I was going to have to take you home on a blotter or not. He says, what happened? He saw that play develop, and sure enough, the hole opened up, and it was on my side, and I couldn't get to the ball carrier, I knew that. So I stepped into the hole and blocked the guards, just tried to stack up the play. And that's what he saw, my jersey, step into that hole. But anyway, the ball carrier, their ball carrier made a mistake. He grabbed the jersey of his blocker and started pushing it. That's a no-no. You can't do that. And they got a 15-yard penalty. So it's still second down. It's 15 yards now rather than on our 6-inch line. On fourth down, they had to punt to us. That's how far back we pushed. Their net yardage for that game was -3. Even considering all that yardage, it was -3. And I don't know that's kind of historic in its right for a team to play the whole game and have minus yardage for the whole game. So then we played, still haven't been scored on, and we played, I think it was East. I'm not sure. It seemed like it was East. Whoever it was, their quarterback had been averaging over 100 yards a game. Because quarterbacks used to run a lot. There wasn't a lot of passing done back then, just some, but not a whole lot. And so that's the reason I could make it at the end. They didn't pass a lot. Tony knows what I'm talking about there. He threw a pass to me in one game. I was wide open. I could have walked into the end zone. I was all by myself out there. He threw a beautiful pass. I forgot who we were playing. I just, oh boy, this is great. And I go in and I turned around, and of course I didn't have a hold of the ball yet. It dribbled out. Beautiful pass though. And Coach Heine at the half, when we walked off this field, he comes up to me and puts his arm around me and says, you know, Bob, he says, there's no sense you going out there if you're not going to catch it. Back to this, the other things that we did when we played East, I think it was East. This quarterback had been averaging over 100 yards a game. We thought we were going to have our hands full. I think that's one, I may be wrong, but I think that's the one when I told you on that kickoff, and he catches the ball and he's running up our side, and Tony, boy, he was ready to lay him out, and Tony dove for him, and the guy did a little shift, and Tony landed flat on his face, and came back in the huddle and says, boy, he is shifty, isn't he? Never happened again with him, though. But anyway, their net yardage from the line of scrimmage for the game was -18. Which is probably a record for the high school. You can look these up. I've thought about doing it, but never did. So anyway, we finally got scored on against, not the first team, but against our reserves in this, was it Central, I believe it was, in the fourth quarter or so about. The coach had already taken it. The coach would not run up a score. When we got 20 points, basically the first team came out. And so, okay. And we was on the bench, and they actually ran around in one of their plays, and they scored a touchdown.
Left in.
And boy, were we upset.
Yeah.
Us sitting on the bench, because we hadn't been scored on. And that was the only touchdown in the league that got scored on us.
It was our third string, too.
Yeah, it was about second or third string. It was coach had cleared the bench, is what it amounts to. Let everybody. He always did that when we were ahead. He'd let everybody play. So that was one thing good about Coach Marquis. Of course, back to Marquis, I don't know about these guys, but as far as I'm concerned, we played more for the coach than we did for the school.
Right.
We played more for him. So anyway.
Were you as frightened as I was?
Huh?
Was you as frightened as I was about Marquis?
Well, sort of.
Oh, boy, I was. He
He was very stern.
12 feet tall.
No, he wasn't.
Seemed like, well, at my
10 and a
my
half.
size.
10 and a half. Well, the only reason Max Dix even made the team is because he was so small.
That's it.
They couldn't see him behind that Greg Tyndall.
In fact, we went
He
into
would really get a lot of good runs because there'd be Greg Tyndall. Where's the runner? Where's the runner? He'd be snuck in behind him.
I remember we went into weigh in the first day, and you step up on the scale. I stepped up on the scale, and I know what I weighed because I just came out of the Corps. I weighed 128 pounds or something like that. So they were all looking down at the scale, and the training table was right to my left, so I just reached under the training table and pulled, and that scale went up to 150. 150, get off of there. I thought, phew, so I picked up a little weight. But that was, in talking about the East game, I don't think it was you, Anthony, that missed a tackle. And it was, if you missed one, I missed a great one, because I missed Dale Rourke, who's All-City, played for Oklahoma State in basketball, outstanding. He's kind of, normally I didn't have to make any tackles because the line was so good. But Dale Rourke came flying through this line, and it's just like Jerry is there. He's right in front of me, and I said, gotcha. And I went like this, and for some reason, I landed flat on my face. How he got around me, I closed my eyes, obviously, but he was that good, Dale was.
But we held him down for
Minus
yardage.
18,
Yeah,
13.
he didn't have no yardage, so.
No.
Thank you guys, because not me.
Anyway, that was pretty much my football experience.
My name is Joe Sopcich, class of 49. I have 3 memories that just stand out. Number 1 is we play in Argentine, and they had this running back, Moon Mullins, was supposed to have been the greatest thing since who knows what. And it was kickoff, and he got the ball, and he was running, and Benavia was running towards him, and they just hit, just bam, like that, and they each fell the other way flat. And I stand there by Benavia, and I was looking down, and Marquis comes running out on the field, and he says, Benavia. This guy opens up his eyes and says, hi, coach. That was everybody thought he was dead. And then the other one was Scardino. And one game, we ran, I think it's called Split Buck.
Oh, yeah.
And Tony cut between myself and the guard and ran for a touchdown. Got on, it was like 60 or 70 yards or something like it to that. And Charlie Guy, good old Charlie, comes over to me and says, why don't you guys block for me like you blocked for Tony? He just chewed me out but good, and I just stood there and laughed at him. And then my other one is they were practicing kickoffs, and Eddie Lauder was practicing, he's going to kick, and Jimmy Dumsky was holding the ball. And after about 2 or 3 kicks, Jimmy held the ball and he picked it up, and Eddie kicked, and he went up in the air and he came down on his back, and good old Marquis hollered, Dumsky! And I think to this day, Jimmy's still running. And now those 3 things really stood out. And they were a great bunch of guys on our team.
Thank you.
My name is Anthony Bonavia, and I graduated in 50. And what I remember was, the thing I remember was, I never played football in my life until I went to Northeast, the second team, and we played a lot of games. But I remember one game we played, and it rained. And it rained so hard, but we kept playing, and the water was about 2 or 3 inches deep in the field. And we just kept playing. When the ball fell, it floated. And we won that game off, but it was a fun game. And then when we went to, when I got to the next year, I was a junior, I just remembered going out for football, and I didn't think much of it. I really was just going out just to be going out. And what's his name? Bill Price. You remember Bill Price?
Yeah.
Well, he was a senior, and I was a junior. And he was a guard, and I thought, well, he's going to be on the starting lineup. And when the coach would never tell us who was on the starting lineup until the day of the game. When the game was getting ready to start, he'd say, you and you and you, you're, and he'd call me, and I thought, oh, I didn't know what to think, because I was beating Bill Price out of it. And I played the whole game, and played all of them, but the thing we did was I remember playing playing on both sides, the
Offense.
offense and defense.
That's right.
And it played, it seemed like it was always on the field. We never did run in and run out like they do today. And anyways, but he was talking about the team, or the Argentine game. Me and Bob McIntosh, you remember Mike McIntosh?
Yeah, halfback.
We used to bet. I said, we was going to bet on who's going to make the tackle on the kickoff. And him and I, we ran as hard as we could run. And we were racing, and that's when I hit Boone Mullins. And I hit him, and they could hear the crowd singing, "Ooh!"
Yeah, a laugh.
They were really. It was because it made a big clashing
You still
sound.
hear it. You still hear it.
Yeah. And they picked him up, and they had to carry him off the field. I got up in those days, but that's one thing I do remember. But he was pretty quiet the rest of the game.
Yeah.
And then we just went on and played. I don't know. There were so many good things that we did, but we won the championship, and that was the whole thing. And that's what I remember. I can't remember every little detail except for a few things, but anyway.
Mr. George.
Stay there, big boy.
Mr. George, you're up.
My name is Bill George. I played on the 1948 undefeated team. I can't tell you what a disappointment I had that year, because in the central game I was the kickoff man, and I kicked off and I was going down to make the tackle and I got clipped, and that ended my season. I didn't get to play in any more games. However, I just remember the experiences of what great teammates I had, and how everyone was pulling for everyone. There wasn't any pettiness, any jealousy or anything. We were playing to win the game, we were playing for the team, and we were playing for Coach Marquis. And if Coach Marquis would have asked us to run through a brick wall, we would have run through the brick wall. That Argentine game, I remember very vividly. And the two players they're talking about, Moon Mullins, who was a running back, and the tackle they were talking about was a fellow named Bill Hope. And both of them went on to play at KU, and then later transferred to Central Missouri State. And I played with them at Central Missouri State.
Wow.
And one day Moon Mullins was talking to me, and he said, "You know, in that game when we played you, that guy who was about 6'8" and weighed about 320 pounds just almost killed me." And I said, "You're talking about my buddy Beans Benavia, and he wasn't 6'8" and he didn't weigh that much, but he was the toughest guard I've ever run across."
Oh, that's good.
So there were really just great memories, and the Crispin games were always really big to me, because I lived out in the inner city and lived a lot closer to William Crispin High School than I did Northeast High School, and always got a lot of harassment from them. But I think we beat them probably 10 or 15 years in a row before we finally did lose to them. And my memories of playing football at Northeast, I remember more about the 47 season, because I played more. Well, I got to play the entire season that year, and I didn't in 49. But the first game I ever played with was in 1947, and we were playing at Crispin. And Coach Marquis said, "George, get in there. We've got an egg sucker out there. And tell Wright to run 99. Well, I had no idea what an egg sucker was. So I went in and I told Wright, I said, "Coach says we got an egg sucker out here. Run 99. Well, 99 was a pass play where I went out and cut and went down. First play I'd ever been in, we ran it, and just like he said, the egg sucker was a halfback who was coming up and not covering the end. And I got a perfect pass, and fortunately for me, I didn't do like Bob did. I held on to the ball, and I scored a touchdown. And then later on, I caught 2 conversions. And so the first game I ever played in, they were great. I didn't know I was never going to have that good a game again, but I had it that one time. And it was, I can't say enough for Coach Marquis. I think he was not only a coach, he was a molder of men.
Yeah.
Because many of us, if it hadn't been for his guidance, who knows where we ended up. No one in my family had ever gone to college, but because of his influence, I went on and graduated from college and then received 2 other degrees later on. And my brother in back of me, who graduated in '54, also went on to college. And it was his influence that kept me going, kept me coming to school, because I really, my freshman and sophomore year, I wasn't much of a student. And they wouldn't let me go out for football my sophomore year because I was too little. And I was looking at a thing that said I was 5 feet and weighed 100 pounds. Well, naturally he wouldn't let me go out. But finally, he relented and did let me go out. And I didn't get to play on the B team. But at the halftime of the B games, the scrubs, as we were called, we would get to go out and scrimmage with the other scrubs from the other school. And lo and behold, the first time I got to do that, some guy hit me and knocked me out. And that was the last time he even let me play with the scrubs. But during the summer, I grew a lot, and like Max, I must have held on to the scales too, because then that next year I got to play on the varsity, and then my senior year I played on the varsity. And I can't relate a lot of things. There were so many things happened, and they were all good. But I don't remember Coach Marquis ever being negative.
No.
He was always positive. And it was just a great time in my life, and we've got these wonderful memories, and we'll always have them. And Bob, don't worry about dropping that ball, because next year you may catch it. And you can tell us how you caught that pass and made that touchdown.
I did catch a pass in that game. Bobby Sims threw me that little short pass across the middle.
113.
Whatever it was. And I caught that one. Of course, he threw it behind me. I was trying, I'm going to catch this. I caught it, and I got tackled immediately. I didn't even try to run with it. I just caught it and kept it. And I got hit immediately.
And Bill, tell them about the refereeing, what football did for you in later years as being referees.
When I refereed,
Yeah.
I refereed football for 40 years, and was very successful, and got to work major college games, and it all goes back to Coach Marquis getting me interested. And you talked about Tony on that run. I remember that run, and if I remember, it was 73 yards. And Tony, you live out in Phoenix, but we want you to come back, and the next time we do this, that run will be 83 yards.
I'm gonna make it 93.
But if you just listen to these men talk, you'll know the camaraderie that was there
Amen.
and still is today.
Well, that play always worked because it was a misdirection. I remember that the halfback and the other halfback and fullback went to the left, and you delayed through about 2 or 3 counts, and then you come back across the center in the opposite direction, and all the defense had already moved over, and it worked every time. It was crossbuck or whatever they called it. It always got yardage. Always got yardage.
Mr. Sardino.
I'm Tony Scardino, and I went to Northeast, and for 3 years I played football there. Like Bill, I had an injury problem in my junior year and couldn't play very much. But my sophomore year we did very well nationally, and we won our championship, and all the accolades that you hear going around actually happened and were true. I remember a couple of things, and one of them is the Westport game that the fellows were talking about. And I remember they had a tackler by the name of Gene Bohai, and Gene Bohai really was about 6'8" and weighed about 320, and he was playing their left defensive tackle. And so I took the stutter step, and everybody went that way, and I came back, got the ball, and I looked up, and there's Gene Bohai, and he's right in front of me. You know, I'm thinking, oh, he's gonna crush me, you know. And for some reason, he took the fake and I just walked right under his arm and just ran under his arm and nobody was out there. There was nothing but green out there at that time. And so I took off as well as I can. But you know, one thing I do remember on that play, I don't think I scored. I think I was tackled from behind. I was so slow.
And on that play, in practice, I don't know if you all remember this or not, I've always remembered this, talking about Marquis. In practice, I don't know if you was the carrier or whether it was Bob McIntosh, because it went to the opposite halfback is what it did.
Yeah.
And we ran it in practice. And I think McIntosh was at that time before he got hurt. And Coach Marquis hollered at the other halfback, whoever it was you, hollered at him and says, "Dix, you're not carrying that ball right." He didn't even have it. It went to the other. He missed the handoff.
That's smooth.
Great deception, I'll tell you with that. I guess we got accolades, all of us did, and the greatest one, I think, was being able to play for our coach in our school. No doubt about that, and our teammates. I don't think any of us wanted to let any of our teammates down ever on any play, no matter what it was, whether it was a punt return or whether it was an off-tackle slam. It doesn't matter. We still wanted to do the best we could, and we wanted to do it not for yourself, but for everybody else that was out there and for our school. That's for sure. But the Westport game, I do remember that one play. And I remember the party you're talking about at Charlie Guy's house. But Charlie Guy and football, I'll tell you, they were just ingrained to one another. He was born to be a football player, and tragically his life ended in Korea. But I remember that party because even though it was a birthday party for Charlie Guy, I found myself out in the front yard with Charlie Guy, and he's showing me how to block the end when he takes the slant on a 45.
Oh, yeah.
And he's telling me how to look the guy right in the eye, and if he goes outside, you go with him and take him out. If he goes inside, go with him and take him in. That's simple. And I found it wasn't that simple when you got out on the field. It didn't work that way, but he was trying. Even then, he was wanting to do something with a football, you know, even at
You remember how he used to run? Charlie Guy used to run, and he'd run with his feet going real high. I mean,
His knees were in his chest.
yeah, he
It's
was
hard to tackle.
He was hard to tackle. I just remembered that part of him. And he was
Another game that I remember was I think it was our opening game against Chrisman back in '48, and Bob McIntosh had his knee blown out in that game, and unfortunately Bob had to come out of the game and the rest of the season. He couldn't play, so that pushed me up to a starting left halfback, and because of his injury, I was able to play the rest of the season then for our team. And I can remember throwing that pass you're talking about, Billy. And first pass I ever threw in high school was to Bill George. And I threw the ball. Bill's running out, looking over his right shoulder, and I threw it over his left shoulder. So he had to turn all the way around and make what they call a circus catch on this ball, which he did make, and for a good game, because we were down in our territory at that time. And it worked out just fine. I do remember that play. At any rate, not much else I could say. I won some awards while I was there, and one day I was walking down the hall, and I told some of the fellows about this today. And we had leather sweaters. We didn't have leather jackets, so everything you had went on your leather sweater. And if you were a football player, you had a little gold football on your letter. And if you had two letters or three, you had three of those or two of those, and you had all these stripes on your arm. And the left arm was always lower than your right arm because it would weigh the material down. And I'm walking down the hall. We had those walk-arounds, if you remember, at the front hall upstairs there before classes started. And here I am walking around with all this garbage on me, and up walks Coach Marquis. And he stands right in front of me and wouldn't let me by. And I said, "Good morning, Coach." And he didn't say a word. He didn't say good morning. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me, and he went from my eyes down to my toes and back up to my eyes and said, "You look just like a Mexican general." and he walked away, and I said, "Yes, sir. Wherever you want me to be, you know." But anyway, I thought that was neat. But that was typical of Coach Markey, you know. And one more thing I wanted to say about him too is he would stick with you. You know, if he felt like you were his person to be playing at that particular position, any mistake that you might make, he's not going to yank you right out. He's going to let you play a little bit longer, and if you keep making a mistake, he'll take you out, try to correct it, get you back in the ballgame again. So I don't think I ever had to worry myself whether I fumbled the ball or threw an interception. I didn't think that that was going to cost me a position that I was in on the team. I always felt like I was his number one, and that was a good feeling to have when you know you're the number one, like everybody here. We were all number ones.
You know, I kind of felt like I was number one, and in scrimmage one day, feeling comfortable with myself mid-season, and we're scrimmaging out on the field, and I'm defensive halfback like Anthony was, and I'm standing there, nothing to do because they were running some plays or something. So I picked up a pebble that was on the field. I thought I'd get it off the field, so I threw it over towards Anthony, just kind of like fun. Coach Markey saw that, and he turned around and he said, "Dix?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Do you think you're just out here to have fun?" And I said, "No, sir." He said, "Now, if you don't like what's going on out here, I want you to just take yourself, go into the locker room, take your uniform, and go home." And I mean, I came from here down to here, and that's what he did to kids. He made men out of kids.
Yeah,
But I didn't want to interrupt you,
But he never played favorites. You wouldn't know who his favorite was.
No, you're right about
He
that.
never played favorites. I don't care who it was. Regardless of their reputation, around town, and you know, that's the greatest halfback or greatest goal, whatever. Boy, you wouldn't know it with Marquis.
Go ahead and finish. I'm sorry.
Oh, I don't have anything else to add. I'm just so pleased that I was able to be around on that team with the guys that are at this table and the ones who tragically are not at this table with us. Because we were all really good friends and thought the world of each other. And I'm just sorry it's been over 50 years that I haven't seen most of you guys sit around this table. And I was bound and determined I was going to come back to meet and see some of the guys again that I hadn't seen for so many years. And I'm just glad to be here.
Well, the one thing that it's football related, but it doesn't have anything to do with the game. And most of you remember this, but there was a fellow who played center on our team named Joe Sopcich. And he lived in Sugar Creek. And his family invited us.
After winning.
After we won the championship, they invited the whole team to come out for dinner.
That was Bobby Slim's idea.
Anyway, it's your folks though, it's your house. There in Sugar Creek. I would almost drive to it. I don't remember it so well. And so, sure enough, Sugar Creek, you know, we all went out there, and as soon as you walked in the door, I don't know if it was your dad or who it was, handed you a jigger of whiskey.
Are you sure that wasn't wine?
Well, I think it was whiskey to start with.
Really?
How old
Because
were
we all
you?
knew our way to Joe's house because down in his basement,
Oh, well, yeah, the
there was
barrels.
a whole lot of wine.
We went down there too that night, tapped the barrel, and there was pictures of beer on the table. And I can remember, but the food was delicious, fabulous.
Plenty of food.
And Josh's table was just full.
But they
But we
kept-
all had a good time.
We sat at the table and they kept coming around and giving you a shot of whiskey and a glass of beer. And I said, I don't drink that much. But I was drinking with them, you know, and we all wound, well, you remember how we wound up? I wound up sleeping there on the floor. There's a whole gang of us slept there. And we got up the next morning, went out, and we had breakfast, and then we went out in the street and was playing football. You remember that?
Yeah.
That was funny.
But that was part of the football year.
Colorado.
But
Oh, yeah.
your mother really
Name
enjoyed
great.
it though.
That's
For
right.
us.
Jerry?
Well, I'm Jerry Slavens. I graduated the year before these top athletes graduated, and quite a few of them were second string. And we had a super team that year too. We were undefeated in 1947. Got a lot of fond memories of Charlie Guy and Greg Tyndall and Bill Swearingen. It was so noted that we had the biggest line in the Interscholastic League. We had a couple tackles weighed 230, 235. We had a guard 225, and I weighed 165. But anyway, we had a real good line, and I played center and right linebacker, and got a lot of good memories. Coach Markey was just as great or greater than we've all indicated, because he built confidence in ourselves and made good athletes. I was not a top star. I think I made all an honorable mention. It'd been mentioned in the book, but I remember it was in the Kansas City Star. But Coach recruited me off the football field when I was a sophomore, and I lived 2 blocks east of the high school, and I had a buddy that lived 3 blocks east, had another buddy that lived pretty close, and we, during the off season, we'd be out there throwing baseballs, hitting balls, and playing, pitching, catching. And anyway, I was snapping the ball to Jerry Wiley. He graduated in 45, I believe it was. He didn't play football, but this guy could kick the ball 50, 60 yards high up and way. And Burry Hama, another guy, didn't play football, but he was one of my best friends. He would catch the ball, and then he'd throw it back to me, and I'd snap the ball. And Coach, evidently, he just happened to be driving by or walking by or something, because he came out on the field to talk to Jerry Wiley. He said, "Hey, what year are you in?" And Jerry said, "I graduated 2 years ago." "Oh, I see." He said, "How come you didn't come out for football?" And Jerry said, "Well, because I wanted to be a baseball player." And Jerry wound up signing a contract with the Brooklyn Dodgers at the time. And then he looked at me and he said, Are you on the second team?" I said, "No, sir. I didn't go out for football my sophomore year." And he said, and it wasn't quite over. I remember that. And he said, "Well, I want you in the gym, or suit up and get out there and play center." He said, "I'm going to need a good center in a couple of years." And that's how, and I really didn't know all that much about football. Basketball I enjoyed, and I played a lot. We played sandlot football, but that wasn't anything like snapping the ball. But anyway, we had a great quarterback by the name of Don Wright. He made All-City. Bill Swearingen made All-City. Greg Tyndall made All-City. Bob Marshall made All-City. And we had an undefeated team. And in fact, I'd like to make mention that Northeast High School had championship teams in 34 and 35, 1934, 35, 1941, 43, 45, 47, 48, and I believe 1950. And I can remember those years because I've looked at this book and I know all about all those guys back in the 40s, and I'm quite a football fan, and I'm proud to be a member of the Northeast Alumni Association, and we all have been members of the Northeast Inn Club, which is the Letterman's Club. If you lettered, you were automatically a member of the Letterman's Club, and the Inn Club, rather. And for many years, I thought about, why don't we have a meeting? Because in all these yearbooks, it says, this is the Inn Club. They all lettered, and they all played. And but we don't have meetings, we don't do this, we don't do that. And I got to thinking here a few years ago, well, why don't we do something? And this is the result. All of us get together, usually about once a month. We have a lot of fellowship fun, and we're going to have more fun and fellowship. And we're all dedicated to Northeast High School. And we're darn proud that the city great fathers, forget the white part, did agree to keep Northeast High School open. And it was because a lot of it was because of their championship teams and the people that attended meetings and so forth. The one play I remember, and maybe Joe Sobchak remembers this, Markey came up with an idea of me snapping the ball to Don Wright, and Don Wright handed me the ball and me run up the field.
Oh, my.
But you had to be on the end.
I think it was in the East game.
But you had to be on the end.
Into the line.
End of the
Well,
line.
I don't remember that.
You had center.
I think we did it to one game, and then I did.
No, you had to be on the end because that's the only way you could catch a pass. I mean, that was a pass. But I remember the play.
It was just, they only played it once, didn't they?
Yeah, we only played
We
it once, and then they beat it.
On the second team when I was center, we practiced.
Oh, I see. Well, I
But you had
can't.
to
My
be on the
memory's not
end
that good.
Because it was
But
a
I picked
pass.
up 5 yards, and that was the end
Well,
of
what
that.
I think special about Jerry is he's the one that had the idea for the Inn Club, and we're all proud of him for that because he spent, no one knows, he probably doesn't even know how many hours he's worked at getting people for guests and the like. But I want to just drift back to the old Blue Stadium for a second. 22nd Brooklyn, I'm guessing?
Yeah.
I never thought much about it because we would go out there and it was an old stadium and the Monarchs had played there. And when I realized that those lockers that we use down there, as ratty as they were down below the stadium, those are the same lockers that Satchel Paige used, and the Blues being a farm club of the Yankees. You got Moose Skowron, Mickey Mantle, Roger Maris, all the great baseball players. When it dawned on me, just like a poof, we were using those same lockers. Boy, that makes me feel darn proud that we were part of that history. Of course, that stadium's gone now; it's all leveled. But I did want to say that about that stadium, how much it meant to all of us.
One thing, and I don't believe he mentioned it because it was Tony Scardino. He went to the University of Missouri, and he was a great quarterback for Don Farrow in the 50s and all through his career. And he set a record, I believe it was most passes, most yardage or something than any other player.
Broke Paul Christman's passing record.
Paul Christman, yeah. And he held that record for 25 years, and I don't even remember. I was there and saw the man, maybe his name was Smith, I believe, the quarterback that broke your record. But
It came from Joplin.
It was dark with it. It was
It fell from Joplin, wasn't it?
I don't know.
I keep telling them, everyone, that it was 18 passes in a row, and then Anthony always says, Max, every time you talk about this, you add another pass to completion. He said it was only really how many in a row?
9, wasn't it?
But I think the biggest thing about that is not so much the record or anything like that, but the fact that we were playing against the University of Oklahoma, and they were favored 51 plus points over us for that game. So, I mean, and to be able to hold them to a 34-20 score, we felt like we won the game.
Oh, sure.
And a lot of bettors probably were hit pretty hard with that, you know. But that was just one thing. The other thing, Jerry, was the fact that it wasn't 47 and 48. Wasn't that? Didn't we win like 18 games in a row?
Yeah, right. But
We held
18.
Yeah.
18 consecutive.
Well, we only played 8 teams. And
Well, I was talking about total wins in a row. I'm sorry.
Didn't you have
No.
two?
we only had one non-league game.
Oh,
That was
just
William
you didn't have
Christman.
two?
No.
The other thing I wanted to say was our line was so fabulous in 48. I'd say I don't even think they knew how good they were, you know.
That shows you how many tackles we make in the backfield.
Yeah, really. And the thing about it was there were times, of course I didn't do it, but there were times when straight open dive play, and I could have cha-cha'd through that hole. You know, I could stand up, I could look around and see what's going on. You know, nobody, I mean, everybody, you guys just wiped them out.
Well, one thing you were talking about the weight of the line in your year, Jerry, how much your line was.
Uh-huh.
When we, in 1948, I think our line average was 190 pounds.
Exactly.
I was played left end. I was exactly 146.
I thought it was 200 pounds.
Might have been 190 is what sticks in my
I
mind.
weighed 200 pounds.
Well, I know. I only weighed 146. And I was a part of it.
Well, Tindall made up for that.
Oh, yeah,
So did
Jim
Jim.
Moran was a giant.
I would also like to make mention that Coach Heine, Fred, I think it was, wasn't
That's
it?
right.
He was a great line coach, and he worked with me a lot on snapping. Even though Marquis thought I was a great snapper, I was not the best snapper, but I was a good center. Don Wright, our quarterback, told me this about back on our 35th year. He said, because I told him, I said, I really didn't think I was very good. He said, hey, let me tell you, Jerry, all them snaps back to Charlie and to him running off the single wing. He said, "You snapped the ball perfect." He said, "Yeah, you made a few bad centers or snaps over the punter's head," but he says, "Well, we won the game anyway," and so that's what counts. It's a lot of fun, a lot of fellowship, and I'll tell you what, we all love each other, and we're all brothers of Northeast High School, and that's the way I look at it.
We've spent a lot of time together, even after football season.
But that's what I'd like. That's what I'd like to talk.
Yeah, I
like
would-
you to talk about. How has this friendship continued? I mean, it couldn't be just about football,
Oh, no.
you know, because you all
No.
went different paths in life. So, I think that's important for the kids of today to know what kept this friendship alive and thriving.
One thing that I think is probably the key to it is the fact that it doesn't make any difference how long it's been.
No.
I haven't seen Tony right since I graduated high school. It's just like we were out last night and we just getting together again today. I mean, there's no, you just don't lose. It's still there. I mean, it's just it happens. That's all.
And how we each pick each other up. My parents were divorced when I was in the crib, so I usually batch with my dad here in Kansas City, works at the Sheffield Steel, or my mother out in Los Angeles. But when I was back here, I was pretty much of a loner because my father remarried and had a couple daughters, so I just kind of wanted to stay out of it. And I at one time lived over at Jerry's house with him and his family and enjoyed them. And then Anthony one time saw me, said, "Where are you staying?" And I said, "Well, I'm staying down here paying rent." And he said, "Wait a minute." And he went and talked to his mother. Long story short, Scardino's gracious family, wonderful parents, invited me into their house, and I stayed in their house in about 1949 or 50, Anthony and I was talking about. And in fact, I was working downtown Wormser Hat Store, and Mrs. Scardino packed me a lunch every day. And oh, those Sunday dinners were just absolutely so scrumptious. So Anthony and I stayed together. I named one of my twin sons Dean Anthony after Anthony Scardino. And we had good fellowship as we lived here, and he had an office in Blue Springs, and I was an agent with Farmers Insurance Group. I just retired 2 years ago after 36 years with Farmers. But when I did move out to Arizona, it wasn't long after Anthony and his wife moved out there. And we just moved back 2 years ago, every weekend, or at least once a month, I should say, we would go to a movie and have a lunch, and we spent Christmases together and Thanksgivings together. And coming back here, my good friend Jerry Slavens, never forget how nice he was to take me in off the street, so to speak, also. So that's what teammates do, and that's what friends do.
And I'd like to talk about Joe. This meal that you all remember. See, I'm kind of sort of like to remember, but apparently his mom must have been one of the world's best cooks. And
She cooked the meal for him. Bobby Sims was the instigator of all this. He talked to my parents and talked to me in doing this. And I didn't want to have nothing to do with it, because I said, wait, these guys get drunk, you know, how they gonna get home? And so Bobby, he planned it all with my mom and my dad. Mom cooked all the food. And everyone liked it. So there is one thing I want to say about Max. Well, my first year at Northeast Glorioso was playing football. And man, he was put together. He was big and he was fast. So I hear this Marine is coming. He's going to be playing football. The Marine was Max Dix he's talking about. So I pictured this great big burly Marine. And I see Max, and he said, "That's Max Dix." I said, "Who?" I said, "That's Max Dix." Because I didn't live in the area. I lived a little ways from the area. And everyone knew Max, but I didn't. And I seen Max, I said, "Oh my God, I'm looking for Glorioso."
so out of that season, what was your favorite game, or at what point in that season did you guys realize you were going to go all the way? I mean, because you must have been both worried that you wouldn't and kind of cocky that we've got it made. So talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think after the William Crispin game,
Which is at the beginning of the
that's the
season?
first game we played.
You felt pretty
But
good
that,
about
we felt good about that. Then when we turned around and beat Argentine, we figured, hey, we can do this. Because Argentine, like I say, that part of town had
They
a
was
reputation
rough. They
for
were
being
rough.
extremely rough, tough, bunch of people over there. And we were a little, I was anyway, a little influenced by that, you know. I thought, gee, we're going to play Argentine? Lord,
Because was Argentina at that time, was that the